Awesome. Well, yeah, so we'll certainly talk about housing affordability, particularly something that I saw from Resi Club, which goes in line with some Zillow data. Unfortunately, I don't have a link to share that. Craig, if you have a way to share that, or if you found a link for that, that would be great. If
I
not,
do, but suddenly I'm buried into open windows. Um, okay, so here we go. So Resi Club Analytics. Okay, where's my Zoom? I can go to share screen. All right, is this coming across for you?
yep, I got it now. This is great.
Okay. So the pandemic housing boom versus a 2025 housing market, two maps. Okay. So I think you started out with sending me one of these maps, right? Was it this one?
Yeah, it was
The
that.
active levels of inventory. So we're seeing the brown is like a drop of inventory over the 6 year shift, down 50%. So that whole Northeast region and the Midwest is way down on inventory. Illinois, New York, parts of Minnesota. And then the green is up in inventory by 50%. And those are where you hear all the doomers saying that the housing crash is, right? So you got a massive surplus of inventory or a crush in demand, Texas, all these boom areas during the pandemic.
Mhm.
Um,
which is
so
which is certainly fascinating, because there's some counties like Greenville County is about even, if not even a touch down. And then I know your market is kind of below, the
yeah,
level as well, but then somebody's going to claim that the entire, market across the country is going to crash because there's a couple markets and a couple counties that are up.
yep, the national housing market, right?
Right. Yep. Because real estate is always national.
Yes, that's right. It's great for clicks. Um,
It is.
so my theory on this, and we got to see inventory. We'll go through some of this data. We'll explore it. But is during the pandemic, everyone could work from home. So they could go down to the sunny states and work from home. And then suddenly they're getting called back to the office. So during all that demand, builders and syndicators overbuilt in these markets at the same time. So now there's a surplus of inventory, and then people are going back to work.
Mhm.
So I think you have a combination of a few factors there, plus the interest rates that went to 7 today. Holy cow.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it's really a culmination of factors, but I do like the thought process and the idea of the builders or people who are injecting that supply, into the regions, into the markets, and now the markets can't absorb because they had, like I think you mentioned last week, Craig, the artificial demand, that was created from COVID and people move into those areas. Now you still have demand, but it's just not the demand levels that was there before. So
Yeah.
certainly see some pullback. I did think it was interesting to see some of the counties in the LA area was also down as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And those got hit hard during the pandemic as well. And I think what you had is you had like Tesla and you had some of those tech industries move into Austin. And then this is what it looked like the inventory between 2019 and 2022. Most of the US was down.
Mhm. Yeah, which is super fascinating. I mean, the chart or the map on the left is, almost somewhat concerning if you think about it, because, we go from 2019 to 2022 and we're down pretty much primarily across the country. So is that just purely people aren't moving? Were they locked in? Um, some parts, and it's really kind of only the middle of the US. I mean, you're talking about the eastern part of Texas, what is that, Oklahoma, um,
Right in here.
yeah, some of those, well, no, sorry, the map on the left.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, you only have kind of like one straight line almost down the center of the country that's green. Everything else is brown, meaning it's under.
Yeah, I wonder what that's all about. statistics are funny. They're not high population areas. So a few listings could probably skew those numbers.
Yeah, you're probably right.
So we had some other stuff here. Let's see if I can kind of find what we had. Um,
Yeah, that was a really interesting graphic, also from Resi Club. I don't know if you're able to pull it out, but I can see it just fine there, so I'm sure others can as well. But just to go see the affordability, I have been following a guy by the name of Freddie Smith. I don't know if you've heard of Freddie. He does a bunch of videos on YouTube. He's a millennial, but he is essentially highlighting the affordability crisis that we have in the U.S. He's not a real estate guy. He's not a stocks guy. He's just kind of a closet economist might be a good word for it.
okay.
Maybe he's a little bit more on the doom side, but you know, anyway, I'm not going to give him too much credit, but he does make some fascinating videos, and he's been really highlighting the affordability issue. Saying how if you're the grandparent, who was living in 1980, here's what your average rent was, which was $200. Here's all your luxuries, which were thousands and thousands of dollars. Here's the average price of your house, and then your income. And then if you fast forward 50 years, now you have a totally different landscape, right? You have rent that is you know what is that, like 6 8 times what it was 50 years ago. Incomes
Mhm.
hasn't even doubled. So it's just like fascinating to see some of these things, and out of that I did some digging to find this chart right here, which shows the household income needed to be able to afford the what they're calling typical, but I'm going to use the word more average house in the market. And this is and,
Um,
and this is really looking at 2 different years, which is 2020 and then going into 2024.
okay, so the brown is 2024, the blue is 2020.
Correct. So blue is going to be more on the left side, and then red's going to be more on the right side. So you can kind of see there are some markets that are very close together. Like if I scroll down, you have markets like St. Louis, Missouri, which it's certainly increased, but it seems like it's a very short increase between the two.
Yeah, 45,000 to 77,000 basically.
Mhm. And then if you go jump up all the way to the very top, you obviously have San Jose, which, certainly is a wide margin. I mean, you're talking about almost doubling.
Wow. That's incredible. Is your market in here?
I don't think so. The closest thing would be Charlotte, which is also very fascinating to go see, right? I mean, people think Charlotte affordability, Charlotte was at 55,000 and it did double to 110,
Yeah.
which is pretty scary. So yeah, Charlotte's probably the closest to us in proximity. Let me kind of look on the list and see if there's another one that's similar to ours.
Yeah, mine is Minneapolis here, 72,000 to 114,000.
Mhm. So thankfully yours didn't double, right? But it still increased.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that chart is really important, for us as investors to look at long term, because the way that the U.S. government is, putting money into supply, whatever form or fashion you believe that is. Um, I, I don't know. It just seems like it's really turning into the have and the have-nots. From a economical perspective. It's the people who have assets and people who don't. And hard to make predictions long term, but I think this is just telling over a 5 year period, and certainly this is a very very unique 5 year period.
Okay. Am I sharing a different chart now?
Yes, this is the Reserve Bank graph.
Okay.
So
I thought I was pulling this up while you talked and then we would jump to this, but this is Zoom and I'm not used to the controls on this side. But this is you had talked about, I just wanted to illustrate the point that the house, the affordability went crazy, but the incomes haven't. So right here you have the green line, which is the M2 money supply, and you have the Case-Shiller home price index, which is red. And the blue line way down here is the median household income, which is just flatlined.
Isn't it crazy to look back at 86 when the income was above both the M2 and the home price index?
That's why everyone hates boomers. They're jealous.
Yeah, and there I can understand why people might feel that way, but Zuber talks about this a lot. There are things you can control and there are things you can't. You have to realize what factors are pushing you
Hmm.
in certain directions and how do you harness that for your own benefit. Case in point, inflation.
Yeah,
Zuber's big thing, inflation is a feature, not a bug. And I think when people start to realize that, they say, okay, how can I own things that are more inflation resilient, that either stay the same or get better with inflation over time, not the inverse.
right. So that's the green line. The M2 money supply is that inflation. So the more money that's printed drives inflation. And then the Case-Shiller index, the home prices, the real estate is an asset that tends to track inflation. There's a strong correlation there. You can see the housing bubble right in here.
Mm-hmm.
Like the home price index went above the M2 money supply. And then also in the 80s. Um, but now it looks like if the trend line goes back, it should say that the median income and the house prices should catch up to the money supply. But that doesn't mean that we repeat the past because I don't know if you've watched the mortgage rates today in the 10-year, but there's a lot of fear on where we're at with our debt level.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's driving the 10-year higher. And then that's what's driving the interest rates higher.
Yeah, and
So,
it's definitely tough because I picked up a new buyer client yesterday, and he is a first time home buyer. So while there are some benefits for him, he's also very much subjected to the rates of this current market cycle, right? And so
yeah,
it's like how do you from the agent side of things, right? Because Craig, you and I are both agents. How do we fight for our clients? While also being able to control the things that we can control. Obviously we can't control the 10-year. We can't control M2 money supply.
we can't control appraisals. We can't control inspections. There's so much in this transaction we have no control over.
yeah. So, it's all about focusing on the things we can and, making sure that we're taking care of our clients. And I think as agents and investors, just really being well informed. It always blows my mind, like how little agents seem to really know what's going on in the housing market. Like I had a conversation with somebody earlier today, actually. And, I'm talking through things like this, data points, some statistics, and, it's like just over people's heads.
Yes. Surprising amount of realtors don't have this level of comprehension. They're good at the day-to-day interaction, but don't see the bigger picture most of the time.
Mhm. Yeah, and certainly everybody doesn't need to be a closet economist, but if you at least know, enough to be dangerous, enough to be able to, have critical conversations, that's really the most important thing when it comes to all of this big data.
Yeah, absolutely. What other chart? We had a bunch of stuff listed here.
Why don't
Um,
why don't you talk about the one from John? Do you say his name Solold? It was
um,
America's largest birth cohort.
is that in our notes here?
Uh, I think so. It was one of the links you sent me. I can put it in the chat if you wanted to pull that up. I thought it was fascinating.
Oh, we're talking the demographics.
Yes, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that was the last one. I kind of went, okay, so we're jumping around a little bit.
Yeah.
Da, da, da.
Sorry, I just pulled them up in I think order from last to first, so I might be
Yeah,
going.
this is actually John Burns real estate consulting chart. Let me share screen. Okay. Now I'm sharing this, right? Okay, so what are we looking at here? We are looking at the annual births from 1996 to 2010. And this is what's coming to the buyer's market. This is the buyer demand. All these people are going to start to buy homes, 4.3 million.
That's uh that's certainly a huge number there.
Yeah. So the millennials exceed the boomer generation. There's more millennials than baby boomers. So then you take the millennial plus the Gen Y. Is it Y or Z? I don't know what number we're on.
Yeah,
And then
see, I think.
okay, Gen Z. Gen Y is millennial. I always get that screwed up. So then Gen Y, millennials, and Gen X, I mean, just crush. They dwarf the baby boom population. And those are the home buyers. So to think that these baby boomers are going to die off and there's going to be a surplus of homes is just crazy thinking. So the demand on housing is there. It's going to be there in the future. We have a slowdown in demand temporarily while the rates are high, right? And people can't quite afford till incomes catch up, or prices drop or rates drop, or a combination of all three. But the demand is there. So house prices aren't going to just crash like we saw in 2008.
Right.
Um, yeah, there's just not
Oh,
enough distress.
and one of the reasons I wanted to kind of bring up my housing affordability graph is because I think there's something underlying between all of these, right? It's kind of this bigger picture that we as agents get to look at primarily. Investors don't necessarily see that, but for people who are turning 18 this year, or they're between 18 and 22, even if they're out working a job and they're making 70,000 a year, which is phenomenal income for them at that age, they are in many cases still priced out of houses. It's
Yeah.
like you got to like really be creative on how to buy something. It's just really really crazy. So, and it's hard to say, will that trend continue? Will we continue to see buyers, younger buyers priced out of the market, because of the affordability, which again, rates, income, price of houses, all that factors into it.
Yeah, who inherits the baby boomer stuff when they start dying off?
Probably not the 18-year-olds.
No, the millennials do though. The 30, 40-year-olds right now.
Yep.
So part of this market here, the millennials, they'll start inheriting that money.
Yeah, and then
Here's another view of this. This is something which chart are you looking at now? Is this another Fred chart?
yep, another Fred chart.
Okay. So this one here is housing inventory estimate. Total housing units in the US is the blue line. And then that is US Census Bureau data. And then the household estimates we go from 2000 is 100 all the way up. So these are index. It's not actual numbers. We just index so they compare direct. So what you're noticing here is that red and blue line get closer together, which means that there's less and less housing units per household. So that's showing that the demand for households is increasing for the number of housing units. So you can either say that household size is shrinking, which is true with divorces and people not marrying. You're seeing a lot of single people buy homes versus back in the traditional days in the 50s and 60s, it'd be a married couple and they'd have 2.1 kids, and that would be household size. That household size is shrinking because marriages aren't staying together. And then you also have the demographics that we just looked at. And then you have restraint in construction because of zoning regulations and ability to add housing units, especially in that affordable pricing point. So back to your thesis on the millennials, that the younger generation is they're getting squeezed on affordability because you have all of these factors working against them. They're not marrying, so they're not combining household income to get one housing unit. They're each buying a housing unit, so there's twice as much demand for the housing units. Plus, they're a larger demographic.
Mhm.
Plus, we didn't build as much housing inventory and the price point that they want to get started in. So they're feeling it all.
Yeah. No, they certainly are. And I don't think it's going to stop, unfortunately. I think
No.
it's going to progressively get worse until there's some sort of tipping point. Don't know what
Hmm.
that is, but it's, it's certainly a challenge. I mean, I don't know about you, Craig. I've seen in my real estate business where, because I got into the business in 2018. So I've seen really probably since 21, 22, my average age of my client is increasing.
Hmm.
So it's like, and it's not just increasing a little bit. I mean, going from, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but let's say it went from 38 to 50, in a matter of 3, 4 years.
Yeah.
So it's just harder for younger people to, buy and sell real estate. And obviously, if you don't own any real estate, you can't sell it. So you're stuck with trying to figure out how you buy something.
Yeah, if you can get your foot in the door, then you can ride some of that inflation and it's easier to stay in the game versus trying to buy in the game later.
Mhm.
I started when I was young in the business, like 21, 22. I bought my first house. I was 20 years old. Um, so I was training in a guy, a mentor and mentee, I should say, and he was young too. He was in his early 20s. So he's got to focus in on when you start in business, you work around your sphere, your friends, right? And being in that age group, he couldn't get his business going because his age group wasn't buying. They couldn't afford to buy. So then that pushes strain on the older realtors, because there's no young realtors getting in the business because their age group isn't buying,
Mhm.
or fewer, I should say, not entirely true. But then the average age of the realtors is getting old.
Yeah, yeah, no, it is. It is. And great thing about real estate, it's an easy business to continue even on into quote retirement.
Yeah,
I there's two agents I know. One she was a good mentor, and another one's a good family friend. And so, um, you know, they both aren't retired. They're in their 70s, if not almost 80. One of them's almost 80. So it's just um,
becomes a hobby.
it does, and for them, they'll do 3, 5, 10 deals a year by just, taking a phone call and, putting some paperwork together. So,
Nice.
which obviously is good for them. But, then if you think about it for other agents, let's say like myself, somebody who's younger, still trying to grow their business, how do I try to take market share? Because, those older buyers and sellers are going to call the older agent. Not always, but,
Hmm.
number of times, and people primarily in my demographic aren't necessarily selling. Some of them are buying. So, it's like I get to help on the buy side there. But, if I want to grow my business, I've got to, figure out how am I coming into contact and generating business and interest through people across different age demographics. So, um, anyway, kind of a little sidebar to that conversation, but
Well, it's all interlinked. It's the population, is it's going through a shift, and we have challenges to that younger generation right now.
I don't know if you've been following, Craig, what Trump is proposing for the new big tax bill that he's going to try to push through. And I certainly don't know a ton about it. I just listened to a podcast this morning for some highlights, but it sounds like he's going to be giving some sort of increase in tax benefit for having kids. I think it's like $1,000 now, but it's going to be $2,500 in the bill. So I don't know what that is, as far as dependence or how that's claimed, but it sounds like Trump's trying to encourage the population to either, repopulate or, um, just encouraging more incentives there from raising a family perspective.
Yeah, that gets into the whole replacement levels of birth rates. We're below replacement levels. So I think I forget the calculation, like two generations are from extinction. There's a fascinating study back in the 60s on mice, and it's Rule 25. I think it's Rule I think it's Rule 25. So this guy creates this mouse utopia. He puts all these mice in this big colony and removes all the stress, all the predators. They don't have to work for food. It's a utopia. It's a mouse haven. And that population spikes a little bit. And then all of a sudden, they create all these little factions, and the mice stop breeding, and then the whole population collapses and they all die off.
Hmm.
So if they're not in that fight for survival and struggle, they just ultimately they stop breeding and having kids, and then the population just goes to zero. So the theory is that our populations head in that direction. Fascinating study. I should find a link for that.
There is a really good book if you're kind of into that sort of stuff. Let me find it. I had to listen to it. It was like a 20-hour listen. So if that tells you anything. Uh, let me figure this out. It's a really, really fascinating book. I would highly encourage anyone to read it. I mean, there's many benefits to it. See if I can find
I
it.
just looked it up. It's called Universe 25.
Hmm. Okay, I got the book here. So the book is called The End of the World is Just the Beginning by Peter Zeihan. I believe he's some sort of statistician or economist.
Yeah, I've listened to him and I don't agree with him on a lot of things. Um,
That was the only thing I've ever heard from him. So I think there's a lot of interesting points that he makes. I don't know that it's all true, but very interesting research that he pulls
yeah,
in.
he talks very intellectual. He's got great information. Then he draws out these conclusions that I just like, where did you come up with that? Like I come up with completely different conclusions. Um, I don't want to outright say it, but I kind of feel like he's almost like a charlatan almost.
Hmm.
Like he's almost like, well, no, maybe not a charlatan, but he seems like he's got an agenda, whereas agenda changes his perspective on things. So he'll come up with the data, and then makes a conclusion to support his agenda. That was my impression of him, you know. But I mean, he's worth looking into. He's got some good information. So,
Yeah, I did feel that way a little bit when listening to his book. I mean, again, it was like a 16 or 20-hour listen, so it's a very thick
mhm.
book. But a
He's
lot.
got some great demographic and that kind of data. Yeah, he does. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, certainly. And I think there was maybe two or three, maybe four countries that he mentioned that even had like a flat or a positive birth rate. So it's like most countries in the world. I think the US was slightly negative at the time. This is kind of a little older book, but
Yep.
I think
Yeah. He's got a YouTube channel, so I listen to the YouTube, and that's where I'm drawing my conclusions on. So,
I'll have to check him out so I can draw my own conclusions.
yeah. I know Jason Hartman's interviewed him. So he's got some credibility at least. Certainly more than me, but I can still disagree with him. And then, yeah, we got some crazy stuff on the mortgage rates. I'm still sitting in the market where I can't find inventory for the buyers. I think your market's kind of the same way. It's a kind of a surreal environment out there right now.
It's really tough. So the buyer that I picked up yesterday, he's below 200,000 on a price point. So our
Wow.
average market price is 350 ish. It kind of changes 340, 360. Uh,
Mhm.
but let me just tell you, there's slim pickings. I mean, we're looking over a 30-minute radius, and there's like 20 houses total, just 20 that are between like 150 and even a little bit above his price range, just so we can have some options to look at.
Holy cow.
And I'm like, gosh, like what is out there for people? I mean, somebody who's trying to go qualify off of a single income, somebody who I don't fully know his situation, but I'm going to guess he doesn't have a lot of consumer debt, whether that's car, you know, credit cards, student loans, whatever. I'm guessing he doesn't, because most people, they're off of one income. It's kind of hard to qualify with consumer debt.
Hmm.
So, now I certainly do think there are some good options. He doesn't mind some value add and, going in and doing some stuff. So I'm pretty confident we'll find him something. But as I was looking today, I was like, I haven't done a below 200 search in a while. So it was a little eye opening just to see what's available in my market.
I'm going to show some stats here. Okay, so this is the Twin Cities region. So this is if you look online and say inventory surging, right? We're at 9,000, a little over 9,000 listings. Back during the 2008, 2009, we were at 34,000. So that's the number of homes for sale. So inventory is surging are the headlines. That's not what I see there. That's not what I feel there. But technically, they're right. It's up from 2022. It's the highest level since 2019. Okay. Here's 2019. Yeah, it's the highest level since 2019. All
Yeah.
true statements. It's all relative.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of like the one person who looks at a stock and says, "Hey, I'm up," but he's only looking over the last 10 minutes. And in theory, yes, he is up, you know. It's like I'm up 2 points.
So here's 208,000 under inventory houses for sale under 208,000. So we have a population of 3.5 million. You have under 700 properties to choose from.
Now, is that including things like land,
All
like
property types. So single family townhouse, condo, town, yeah, does not include land.
okay, okay,
So
so
if we go single family only, it's got to crunch the numbers.
100.
147.
Wow, that's insane.
Hmm.
150 houses under 200,000 for 3 million people.
Yep.
Man.
So yeah, it's the stats will tell you anything you want to see. What do we need to see? Shows per pending, closed sales, pending sales, days on market. Let's look at that. That's kind of the first thing to tell you if a market's softening.
Yeah, I'm curious what
Okay.
your market is.
22. Oh, I got to change that to all property types, all price ranges. Oh, still 22. That's a median. Average is 47.
Our average is 58 or 59 right now. So
Okay.
similar.
Yep. Months supply. This was always the metric I went after. We always figured about 5 months supply was a balanced market.
Looks like you haven't been balanced in almost 15 years.
Yep.
That's crazy.
So just back during the heyday, early 2000s, you could build a house prior to the all the new codes that came out. You could build a house in about 90 days. So if you had a 4 month supply of house, you could rebuild the house's replacement. That was kind of the way they looked at it. 5 months, 4 or 5 months was about the balance. Anything over like 6 months becomes a seller or a buyer's market. We're at 2.4 months. You cannot build a house in 90 days now. It's more like 120 to 150 days. Well, that's a replacement timing. Showings per listing. There's 4.7. Showings are down a little bit. Showings to pending. Doesn't take many showings to get a pending. 10 showings to get a pending. Median. Average is crunching the numbers. 13.
13 showings to get under contract.
Yep. And then percent of last list price. They're getting 100% full asking price. That's median. Average, 100%. They were getting almost 103% of asking price average.
That's crazy.
Yep. So percentage, that's kind of where I differ from Zuber. Zuber's like make aggressive offers, and that's true in a lot of markets, but know your market first. You know,
Sure, for
there
sure.
are properties that were overpriced that you can go aggressive on though.
Well, and I think it's kind of the sniper versus shotgun approach, right? It's like if you've honed in on one or two properties that, have sat for 6 months or 9 months, you know, then maybe
Yeah.
there's a chance. But I agree. Got to know your market.
Yeah, percentage of original list price. Even the original list prices aren't moving. So what's happening is it's not the median price because they're showing like a 0.18% drop in our market. It's not that the price on the median house is dropping, it's that the higher end isn't selling. So as there's just a couple more units on those, $20 million listings don't sell, that brings that median price down. So that's what's skewing the numbers. So you got to be careful of that. But that's what everyone goes off is the median sales price.
Mhm.
And then pending sales, this is 2025. And then the market crashed. And then this was the low. We're at 45,000 sales. We haven't been back here since like 2012, 2013.
Yeah. Yeah, it really kind of took a steep drop off from 22 to 23, looks like.
Mhm. Do you have this data for your market,
Uh,
InfoSparks?
I don't, but I'm really liking this. I tell you what. I mean, if I had this, this would be a game changer.
Um,
We
this is available through the MLS, and I forget who puts this out.
I'm gonna log in right now and see. We typically have like inside of our MLS, you have a little page to go get some of that data information from.
Okay. Who does InfoSparks? I know New Hampshire offers it. Is InfoSparks available in South? You're in South Carolina, right?
Yeah, South Carolina.
So the Coastal Carolina Association of Realtors has it.
Oh, that's great.
Are
Uh,
you a member of that one?
I'm not. No, I'm Greenville and Western Upstate. I'm gonna see what Western Upstate has.
So you can purchase it.
Okay.
Are you real MLS? Is that your MLS?
No, I think real is Charlotte.
Okay.
Yeah, it might show up as GGAR. That's the Greenville MLS. Yeah, I have a little bit of some quick data. I can kind of show you my screen a little bit so you can see. So this is for Western Upstate, which is Anderson, Oconee, and Pickens County for the most part. So our average days on market for this county is 46. It's just the average. 3 months of inventory, 112 closed sales. So it's a very small population, Greg, not like yours. But 188 pending sales, 365 active listings, and a 96% list to sell price ratio.
Okay.
So um, you can kind of see the average sales price, and this is for Anderson County, so this is a little bit different. This is going to be under Greenville, but even Anderson is sitting right about 300, which is nice.
Nice.
And honestly, I haven't even played around with this too much because they don't have a ton.
Realist is a nice system. I like that one.
Yeah, let me see if I can pull in Greenville stats too. Yeah, so see, Greenville has a lot more. Let me see if I can take out. Let's see. Yeah, so the average resale price is 409, but our overall sales price is a little. I think it's closer to 370. So
That's new construction is down about 4%.
Yeah, which would probably be about right. They've been building a lot of townhome communities in Greenville, so the townhomes are going to have a lower average price point. So
Okay.
yeah, but you can see the average sales price per foot is increasing, although 198 still feels pretty low. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so it does say the average sales price is 420, but I feel like it's lower than that. It's probably closer to, yeah, 365, somewhere in there. But I certainly don't know how to use Realist as much as you probably do, but it
It's
is.
primarily the tax research. So, Property Radar, this offers a lot of the information Property Radar does. You can pull lists from it, not as easily as Property Radar. Property Radar is more for the investor, the wholesaler. This is a little more for the realtor.
Still kind of good to see some of that data. And I've got to find where it is, but Greenville County, their MLS will go send out like a quarterly report, so you can kind of pull some of that data together and see a lot of that.
Okay.
But unfortunately, it's just like a PDF. It's not like a interactive system.
Yeah, that InfoSparks is available to most MLSs. It's just sometimes they don't include it in their package and you'd have to buy it separately. Our MLS includes it. I don't know how useful it is for you. It's nice to look at, but I don't know if it's worth a lot of money.
Yeah, especially if ours already provide it. It's just not in maybe a real user friendly format.
Yeah.
So
So interesting. So Theodore's on the line. How are you doing, Theodore?
Good.
Just
How are you doing?
good. So you got anything to add to the conversation?
Uh, well, it's interesting in regards to affordability that you know, I think I think we are reaching a tipping point where a lot of people can't afford homes, and there's more incentive for builders and developers to start building cheaper and smaller houses. And I think, you know, when interest rates were low, there was a very big inflection point in the number of permits and houses that were being built. And I think that it encouraged a lot more developers to start. And I think that, in the long run, uh, more and more people, companies, and developers will start to build houses, and it might start to come down a little bit.
So Hunter, you do some investing with some what are you working on? The Fannie Mae help me. What projects are you developing?
yeah,
That
so
kind of fits in that.
yeah, yeah. So I've got basically a little business with a buddy. We do land home packages. So think of like a new construction, manufactured home from the factory, buying it, putting it on a residential lot, and selling it as a new construction unit. It qualifies for traditional housing. It's fairly easy to do those. I mean, it's really not that complicated. Craziest thing you might have to deal with is city or county inspections and your septic, because most of the spots we're putting these on are going to have septic. So we had to do a triple stone aggregate system on one that we're about to put on the market, I think next Friday. So that one had like a really kind of complicated septic. So anyway, more details than you asked for. But so those are kind of meeting some of the needs of affordable housing. They're not super complicated. Most counties in our area still allow them. It's not like you have to go get something rezoned or try to push stuff through. And the time frame on that is pretty quick. We bought the lot on Valentine's Day, February 14th, and we're about to get it on the market now. And we got delayed about 3 weeks for a dumb issue, so we could have had it on the market beginning of the month. So those things turn and sell in less than 6 months. I mean, your average is probably 4 months from buying your land to selling the whole thing.
What market are you in, Theodore? What area?
Washington, and north of Seattle.
Okay. So your area is similar to mine. So you have a regional body, like we call ours Met Council in the Twin Cities, and they basically make affordable housing illegal. And I say that with a little drama, right? But they prevent affordable housing from being built. So in the Twin Cities area, Washington, New York all has this. They're concerned about what they call urban sprawl. So they have a region that allows where the water and sewer can be built around the city. And they slowly annex a little bit of areas at a time. And you can't develop the land unless you're connected to the metro region of sewer and water utility. So that does a couple of things. In our market, we have a ton of farmland, right? I mean, we're Minnesota. So you have a little metro core of 3.5 million people, and then farmland for miles, hundreds of miles every
Hmm.
direction. But we can't go beyond that little area because we can't connect to the utility, so we can't develop housing there. So then that turns a single family lot in our market to the low end. The low end of a single family lot is $250,000 to $500,000. So just out of the gate, before you even pull a permit or come up with any plans, you're $250,000 just for the raw land. And then you're going to have 50 to $60,000 in building permits. And then you're going to have sack and whack fees of another 30 grand on top of that. And then you're going to have building codes that are going to require, you build to, R6 or 2x6 construction for the insulation, low E argon glass, all the insulation, all the vapor barriers, all the arc fault, all these things that add cost to the housing. And so now for new construction home in my area, we're looking at $900,000 for a single family house to be built. Now you can go out a little ways and you can get new construction for around 600,000 because that land price gets a little more affordable. So now builders can only offer new product to the market for 600,000. So in effect, all these regulations have made starter homes illegal. You can't build a starter home. One is zoning. You're going to have a certain house size that you're limited to in these areas because these planning commissions, the cities don't want to see affordable housing and that they want to see the big tax base. They want to see the protect their property values kind of thing. And then they'll allow some high density stuff along corridors and busy areas. But they won't allow the traditional, 2 bedroom, 1 bath, 3 bedroom, 1 bath, the split entries, those starter homes. So in my market, what happens is we have the metro region. That's where your lots start at 250. And then builders, they'll leapfrog out of there and they'll go to another little small town. And then they'll build off of that town's water and sewer. So that way they're outside of that metro area. So they leapfrog, and now you have this suburbia that is exploding, our drive out of the region. So the city's growing from these little nodes all the way around. And then those nodes, you can drive 45 minutes to an hour to the urban core of Minneapolis, but now you can get that lot price down around 50,000 and you can build your starter, split entry. So that's the dynamics on why builders can't provide this stuff. Builders would love to provide this stuff, but they can't. Their hands are tied from zoning, accessing sewer and water, and from the building codes. It's just they can't do it. In effect, we've made starter homes illegal. And
Mhm.
that's not true everywhere in this country. Some cities, some metro areas will allow these tiny homes, but you're not going to get a tiny home development approved in my market. There's just no way.
Well,
Yeah,
and
I was thinking about when you were saying that there's no houses for under $200,000. I mean, that's just what the sticks alone cost to put up a new house.
Mhm.
Um, and in a lot of the planning commissions that I've been to, um, I went to they were doing a new master plan for one of the towns I invest in, and there's usually young planners who have started to move more towards small houses, or the trend right now is the missing middle. A lot of planners are promoting that, but the towns that I invest in are just filled with NIMBYs. And every commission, every meeting is people asking, well, how's that going to affect traffic? If we expand zoning, where how's that going to affect the character of the town? I mean, they have some points. I mean, the town I invest in is a small town, and they like that it's a small town, but people need places to live. And they're not even proposing new projects, they're just proposing new zoning. It's not going to all come at once and completely change the character. Um, but I really find that I think that especially in young people, that the mindset is shifting towards more density, um, and trying to solve the housing crisis. And that as you know, I guess millennials and Gen Z get more political power, that I think that some of these regulations might start to shift.
Yeah, you raise a good point. We talked about the demographics earlier, Gen Z and millennials. If they get active, I mean, they would crush the boomer, the hold, because they have more people, right? So that vote it would be more powerful. Um, I just hope they're attuned enough to the issues and not just we want cheap housing. You know what I mean? It's just there's a lot that goes into it. You can go high
Yeah.
density housing. I mean, you can do trailer parks. I'm sorry, but the tiny home is their trailer parks, right? And they're good housing solutions for cost effective housing. And we used them post war because we need to provide a lot of housing really cheap. But a tiny house is nothing more than a trailer park, just glorified.
Well,
So you need a mix of housing solutions.
yeah. And even for me, like, what I'm doing with, manufactured housing, it is a mobile home. And primarily the biggest thing that hurts me is deed restrictions that get placed on, land from people who've owned it anywhere from the 50s and 60s on up until now. Somebody said, hey, I've got 100 acres and I'm going to subdivide the heck out of it, but I don't want any mobile homes on my land. And
Mhm.
people associate a mobile home with a really crappy single wide trailer that's trashed out. And I get it. Like, South Carolina is littered with them. So is, most of the South. But the product that I'm putting on, these lots is better quality than most stick built houses nowadays at a fraction of the price. Like the house itself that I'm buying and putting on there costs $65,000,
Oh
which
my God.
my total cost to do one of these is about 150. That's including the purchase of land, not including some financing costs, but 150 to 175 is the total cost, which I'm going to sell that thing for 230. So I'll clear, a 30, $40,000 profit, which is great for me. But I'm also providing housing that's, still substantially less than the average cost of new construction. I mean, I showed it earlier, but really the average cost of new construction is probably 340, 320 if you're looking for like nice, real entry level new construction stuff. So it's like, okay, well, I'm 100,000 cheaper than a builder. It's like obviously somebody's going to value the affordability over, living in something that has a pool, a community that has a pool. So, but there's certainly lots of issues that affect me, that affect you, Theo, that affect, Craig, you and your market. It's big government, it's overreach, it's people who don't understand the process, don't understand what we need, and aren't really offering solutions. They just want to say, hey, good idea, but I don't want this here.
Where do you get
Anything?
um, your manufactured homes?
Sorry, you broke up in the beginning. Could you repeat that?
Where do you get your prefabbed homes?
So we buy them direct from the factory. We have a dealer buddy that we go through. So essentially we'll go to your Champion, your Cavco, your Deer Valley. What are the other ones? Clayton. So all of those are essentially just factories that produce homes. What you see on the side of the road a lot of times, if you're driving through a town, is somebody that has a dealership set up, and just kind of like a car dealership. They're there to sell you homes, stuff that's either on their lot or they can order it for you. Same exact way a car dealership works. They're going to make money by, taking what they would buy it from the factory at and marking it up, either a percentage or a dollar amount. So what we can do is basically go through a dealer who understands our business model, and we buy it for a flat fee or a flat percentage. So, we're going to pay very little to get that. And it's really just whatever the cost of the factory is, plus, add a couple thousand on top. So, and then the beauty of that is that, you can buy it, you know, in your state or wherever it's going. And as long as you've got either a license to do it or somebody there to help you, you can do this anywhere across the country. Like I've got one project in Greenville, South Carolina, where I live now. And I've got another project 7 hours away in North Carolina that I'm going through a different dealer, but it's the same thing. Same house, same process.
You
And you're
don't
putting
need
them
the,
on.
go ahead, theater.
No, you go ahead, Craig.
I was, I think I know the answer to this. So our mobile homes here, we have to have like a DMV title on it because they originally came with axles. These are prefab. You don't have to deal with that with these, right? These are just prefabs.
You do. You do. So essentially, we get the title from the factory, or I'm sorry, we don't get the title from the factory. We get the paperwork from the factory. I take it to the DMV, apply for the title. I get the title in the mail. And then once I've set the house on the permanent foundation, I then go through the de-title process with my attorney. And then they affix that trailer to the land and it now becomes real property.
Yep. Okay. Same as here. Yep. Go ahead, Theodore.
No, I don't have any other questions.
Okay. All right. Well, it is 4 o'clock. I'm gonna have to sign off. You got anything else you want to add to the conversation?
That's it for my side. But Craig, appreciate you as always. Good conversation.
Nice, Hunter. Nice talking to you, Theodore.
Yeah. Thanks
Yeah.
for. And we'll be here next week, same place, same time.
Okay.
All right. Have a good one.